Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
It's hard to elevate awesome American history any more awesomer, but we wanted to take a steampunk feel and add it to American history because everything steampunk is 1800s England, pretty, for the most part. And then Rory and I said, hey, well, why don't we just back it up a few years? It's got to start somewhere. And where better than 1770s in America, where it was just ripe for a story world and people to pick from. And we immediately decided we don't want to change real history because we don't want to take away from any real accomplishments or real people doing things. And some of those, those real people have real descendants. And we didn't want to take away from that. So the American continent, especially the Northeast, makes it geographically a little easier too for us to
drive there,
to drive a few hours east and
easy to do the research.
Exactly, yeah. And there's so much that's documented as well.
Oh yeah, it was incredibly well documented.
Yeah. So, but then. At that point, on that point, we picked a lot of stuff that wasn't well documented. We really wanted that made it a little easier actually because we wanted to avoid nitpickers Every story has them. And especially if we're dealing with real history, we wanted to not give people opportunities to say, but but also not to detract from real accomplishments. So that gives us an opportunity to take, if an individual is not somewhere and there's no documentation, where was this person, or if they don't quite know what happened, we can put our own story in there. It really, for Rory and me, it was, I don't want to say no-brainer, but also it's a part of history that we just love. And there was no struggle diving in to this story world, because I think I said last week, I was in Philadelphia almost a decade ago, but I was on a walking tour. And I'm taking pictures of every sign, of every plaque, everything to send to Rory. And I'm like, we gotta do this. We gotta have this person, this person. And I'm trying, I was going crazy, and it ended up being, of course, an incoherent jumble of almost useless information that I bombarded Rory with. But we had actually we picked a few little things from that. I think they stayed in there, which is storytelling, really. People, when you're writing a story, you have tomes of information that you have to distill down.
Right. That's the long part, distilling it down.
to something digestible and enjoyable. So this story world, we also realized too that it really could almost be a limitless world if we want to spin off this way or have a person this way. Of course, we're going to stick to our main story for now. But if we want to keep creating our story world in the American steampunk genre, there's nothing stopping us. And chronologically either, we could just keep going through a timeline and then have it meet up with the traditional Victorian style steampunk and so forth. So
we were pretty adamant about our parameters being, we're not going to quantum leap our protagonist around. So the world will still be going on around him. He's not going to be at every major event. Yeah. Just he has his own timeline woven through the world, and the world's still going on around him.
Well, before I ask my question, I want to welcome our other whammer, John Medic III. Hey, JM3, what's up, man?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good.
Good. Sorry about that. A little bit of thanks. A little technical difficulty for whatever reason. The link wasn't showing up on the PC, so I had to go to the phone, email it over, and get it. So it's
no worries.
I have to do that every time.
Do you? Okay, so it's not just me. I'm in good company. Thanks, Rob.
It will not. It will not go from Messenger. He sends it to me in Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, exactly.
And I open it up there, and a window opens, and then nothing happens.
Oh, weird. Right. Yeah, Messenger wouldn't give me anything but the last message, and I don't know. But I'm just glad to be here. I've got to do something to lift my PC up. Otherwise, I'm going to be looking down all day because I got my camera up there. So if I step out for a second, that's why. But
no worries. Glad you're here. So back to the question, Rory. When you guys were deciding to connect your world, which is really, it's a blend, obviously, of actual history and then the fictional characters. Did it occur to you that the fact that you had historical characters was going to instantly be compelling to people who are fans of American history already, right? So you had a built-in audience to a degree.
Yeah, and we were banking on it, but like Scott said, we knew from the get-go that there would be nitpickers and naysayers, like, well, that didn't actually happen. He wasn't actually there, which is why we were so heavy-handed with actual historical accuracy.
Right, right.
And the research that goes along with it is mountains of books.
Right.
Oh man.
Well, I mean, how much would you say, like, if you're the history, you're trying to keep the integrity of the backdrop of history intact. So you're not going to change what actually happened. What you're doing is carefully threading in between historical. Is that fair to? Okay.
That's perfect. Yep.
Okay. So does that bring a lot of challenges to like the creative side where you go, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? But how are we going to do that?
Yep.
I mean,
we are restrained quite often.
We'll come up with an idea, and we have to stop. Sometimes it's good. We'll go down the rabbit hole of like what actually happened on. So our story starts in the end of August 1776, and we we needed to know.
Familiar.
Yeah, it's a good year. Good year. We needed to know when things wrapped up, where people were for the most part. And so when we come up with our next idea, we want to find. We're like, okay, wait, was General such and such here at this time, or was this what was the weather? We want it to be accurate. We also don't want it to stop everything, but we do want to follow what really happened, and we will come up with a crazy idea, and then sometimes we have to be like, we'll save that. It doesn't fit
for our Bizarro universe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you gonna
have the Kelvin timeline, and we'll
please, no. I was going to say, please don't enter the time altering universe.
No. I don't have the brain. I don't have the brain power to do time travel. I would.
Too much work.
Our timelines we already look like lunatics with our red threads and our pins and our timelines.
So it's kind of like A Beautiful Mind.
Exactly.
Minus Jennifer Connelly.
Right. Yeah.
There.
Yep. But if you insert Ben Franklin and no Jennifer Connelly,
that's a shame, right? Trade off.
That's it. That brings me to my question here. What about any characters, perhaps love interests for our lead that are going to also fit into the world, maybe as actual figures or as invented? Have you guys thought about it? Certainly, yeah.
We have.
Okay.
And I don't want to reveal anything. So you can tease without revealing. We are if this is successful and our story keeps going, we will follow Felix through the war, and there will be plenty of opportunities for new characters and character development and his personal growth and his interrelational growth. So so that's I'll leave it at that.
Okay, that sounds
so
really
you're
cool.
allowing them to do fan dancing.
Is that 2 Star Trek references in one?
Tease without revealing anything. Isn't that what fan dancing is?
That's good.
Absolutely. That's very good. It's very good. You know, because of that comment, Rob, you're next. You have to talk about.
No good deal.
All right. Well,
go for it. How do you create worlds for your characters, and how do you make them compelling, but also fit into some sort of level of connectivity to the real world, so that there's a level of believability for you?
Well, I go on Google and I search for things that are similar to what I'm trying to create. And then I take those and build on them. I'll do composites in Photoshop of this element that I pulled from here and put that in this element, and I will either throw it on the light box and actually copy it onto the page, or I'll print it out and set it off to one side of the drawing board so that it inspires whatever I'm drawing. Of course, usually the world that I'm doing is prefab. The writers already kind of come up with the ideas. They kind of describe what they want. Then I have to make it come to life. So, and then for a long time, I was working on the Star Trek books. So, of course, that world is already created. But occasionally they would get outside of what, they'd get off the ship or they'd get off the space station. And I'd have to figure out, well, what does the rest of that universe look like? Because you've got hints. But especially early in Deep Space Nine, we only caught glimpses of Bajor or Cardassia or any of that stuff. So I had to take the clues that I was given and create something out of that. And that was kind of fun, actually. It was a nice little mental exercise where I would have to come up with what this stuff looked like. But most of the time on the Star Trek stuff, all I had to do was go to the shows and pull up an episode and go, oh, yeah, that's that section of the ship. I'll have to make a copy of that picture and that particular scene, and I'll use that. But here's a panel that I've got to draw. They're punching buttons on a panel. Well, this is the panel I need right here. So I had lots of research for that. But like for Twilight Grim, I actually took a a big city. I think it's in the Middle East. I pulled up Google and I forgot what I punched in as the query, but it brought up all these futuristic looking skyscrapers, and I went, perfect. I'm not sure where it was. I believe it's
Dubai.
Dubai.
It might be Dubai.
Dubai.
Because it's got all these weird looking futuristic looking buildings.
Yeah,
so I just used
right.
that.
That's
I put that on the light table. I copied that sucker.
Good for you, man.
I've got
would
Dubai showing
flip
up in
it.
one of my stories too.
Yeah, I
a
would
great
flip
place.
it sometimes so it doesn't look exactly like that, or I'd move buildings around in Photoshop. But yeah, it's so futuristic looking that it was a no-brainer to just throw that in there. And then the other side of the city that Twilight Grim takes place in, we've got the rich side, and then we've got the vampire side. That should be like apocalyptic looking.
Okay.
So you just go back to you punch that into Google, and there's a ton of stuff that'll pop up for that as well. And then you just kind of pick and choose and go, okay, well, then at one point I had to have a theater for a battle to take place in. So I went to the 1930s theaters and pulled those up because they're going to look old and and if you play with them a little bit, they'll look dilapidated. And that's how I visually create stuff like that. I try to get the feel right. Read through the whole story, get the feel for how the place is. Because when I read, there's a movie going in my head. I hear the sounds. About the only thing I don't is smell. I don't smell the smoke or any of that.
Right.
But I do see it, and I even sometimes taste it. But I've got all that rolling in my head. So then I try and find something that I can use that will, for a reference for that'll make it feel proper. So that's
I do that. I do that as well. I use visual reference for environments if it takes place in the real world. But I'm not gonna. You don't have to answer this if you don't want to. But do you actually light box it and trace it as it is, or do you alter
sometimes.
it? Okay, sometimes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, both. Yeah.
Okay.
If it's a lot quicker if I find something that works perfectly. I throw it in Photoshop, blow it up to the right size, change things around a little bit in Photoshop itself.
Yeah.
Print it out on. I've got a printer that'll print 11 by 17, so I can print out a whole page's worth. I could actually lay out a whole page in Photoshop. I've done that a few times, but I don't usually do that. I'll just do a panel or two. But if it's a 2-page spread, then definitely I'll print it out on 11 by 17 paper and throw it on the light box. I've even got a light box I've got it right here.
Show it to the audience here. Should be interesting.
11 by 17.
Yeah, I've got that.
So
that one too.
I can throw a whole page on there. And, it'll light up. And
have you ever heard? Have you ever heard of a site called SketchUp? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's like a sketch, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's a free. There's several of them. There's Turbo Squid and a couple of others. What they do is they have models, 3D models of things. Like if you have, like for example, for me, I would use like a Victorian coach, and you can actually pose
move it
the 3D image. Yeah, and that way you can get the exact angle that you want. But little behind the scenes process stuff. Barb, it's time to talk to us because you write and draw and ink. So when you're writing and you're creating the world for Divinity, your award-winning book, what went into that? I know it's based in our world. I mean, it's based in the real world, but were there any enhancements in your mind that you wanted to make to our world to fit the story better? Yes or no? And then if, elaborate on that for us, if you would.
Well, I wanted it to be familiar so that the reader could feel like they could walk into the scene at any moment. So I wanted it to base it in our regular world. The only enhancements, obviously, are when Divinity is using her powers, and then there's a glow about her, and you'll see that in throughout. There's a glow when when she's about the person who's being healed too. As far as stretching the bounds of reality, obviously, I've got this evil cabal, and you're going to see, some holograms going on, and some floating heads from all over the world, and we're not quite there yet in our world, but we're getting really close. So, I jumped forward about 10 years as far as that technology is concerned. But really, no, I'm just keeping it real so that you can really relate. The soldier stuff is based very much in reality. I do a lot of research. I've said this before, but for anybody new, I'm a military mom. My son is a master sergeant going on 18 years now. So I like to do my research. And you Air Force guys out there, if you don't know what a FOD walk is, then shame on you.
Chair Force.
Huh? Chair Force. I heard that. I heard. Mr. Coast Guardie.
Here we go. I'm gonna interject here. Infrafan says, "Do you have?" This is for Barb and for Rob, I assume, and possibly for me as well. Do you have more fun working on pre-established worlds or an unwritten one? Rob, take a stab at that.
Yes.
Okay. Both. He likes both. What about you?
Yeah, I like both really. Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Barb?
For this first book, and I have other ideas in the back of my head, but for the first one, I went with something a little safer and to get myself established. So I went with the world that we're living in right now. If I have an opportunity to the other book that I have in my head, it's very much happening in this world, but with fantasy creatures. So, so it would be a kind of
that could be fun.
Yeah, it would be world building to a certain extent because it would be like centaurs and trolls and stuff like that. That walk our world and always have. So how did that come about? That it's like, hi Ralph. I stand, and stands a centaur, and but that would mean that I would have to do a certain amount of world building in the fact that when did all of this? When did they step out of the shadows and become a part of our real world?
Right. But it is cool to take our real world sometimes and just much like J.K. Rowling did, right? And throw
a monkey wrench into it,
throw a monkey wrench into it and bring fantasy elements into it. I'll answer in for fan as well. I have more fun working on unwritten worlds because by definition there's more freedom there, and so I've worked on a Lucasfilm project before when I did Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and they were very kind, but it was also very much working within their world. When I worked on Batman for DC, I was sent, which is, I still have it, it's really cool, Batman Bible, they used to call it, which is a style guide for the cave and the gadgets and the visual cues that had to be in the shots. And that's fun to play in those established popular worlds, but it's much more fun to play in an unlimited universe.
Actually, I'm going to go back here a little bit, and this is not the first writing I've ever done for Silverline. I do have one other published story, and that was for ElfQuest, which was definitely not our world. And they have they have a whole Bible written about what the world of Two Moons is about, and the technology and the words that you can use. And it has to be words that wouldn't naturally pop into your head as a human on Earth. They wouldn't say, "Oh, gee whiz," or it would be their own made up
golly
language.
Gee.
Yeah, golly gee. Well,
wowzer.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're writing all that into Steam Patriots. Is that strange?
They got Moxie, kid.
They would say something like
Jiminy Jillikers.
Yeah, they'd say something more like, "Oh, zoot spit," you know.
Right. It's interesting that's also a part of world building is vernacular, right? You want to create a vernacular that's indigenous to the world you're creating. So, Scott and Rory have to deal with the vernacular from the 18th century, right? So, what did they use for exclamatories, and that sort of thing? And I'm sure.
Huzzah!
Yeah, I hate to tell them, but the F word has been around for centuries.
Yeah, it's been around.
Yeah, that one's been around.
It's Anglo-Saxon. It goes way back.
Way back.
Yeah.
So that brings us to our friend JM3, as I like to call him. That's your call sign. You're an agent, as far as I'm concerned.
Let me go ahead and I'll change my name on that once I'm done talking. But going back to world building and vernacular and language and everything, there's something that always makes me think when we have these discussions. One of my favorite movies of all time, outside of the Holy Trilogy, Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi, is Heathers. If anybody's ever seen Heathers,
seen it.
Christian Slater, Winona Ryder, late '80s movie that they could not make today.
What's it called?
Heathers.
Heathers, like the name plural.
Yes. So if you
dark
school,
comedy,
very dark comedy. If there was no Heathers, there would have been no Mean Girls. But it's like Mean Girls with a body count and much better. Oh yeah, and so
much better.
It's fantastic. Yeah. And the writer of that film actually made sure that he didn't want to date his film by using slang of the time, which obviously outdates a movie immediately. So like all the slang is created and used throughout the film, but it's nothing that ties it to any time period. He created his own slang, so it's really a timeless piece, which is kind of cool. So as you're talking about, Scott and Rory needing to use slang of that time, and Barb was talking about ElfQuest slang from not of our world, it's if we're talking about in our world, being very careful on what we're using for words, because that will also set our piece in a specific time. And we know the slang that Peter Parker was using, in the 60s versus now. Well, if you just read the captions with no pictures, you're going to know what time period that book was written in. So that's
it was groovy, man. It was groovy.
It's a happening, man. Yeah. But so onto my answering the question. When it comes to world building, with what I've done with Sniper and Rook. So Sniper and Rook, very timely. I was told I better be on today to sell up Sniper and Rook because that's part of the Kickstarter that starts tomorrow. Yeah. So Sniper and Rook, when I first created them, it was actually when I was in college. It was very politically motivated, very government, spy, espionage. It was the Cold War days for me. So that was something that was always like near and dear to my heart. So the phrase that I always kind of liked using, it was our world. It is our world today, with a little bit of revisionist history going in there. So things that people wouldn't have seen when I created these two characters back in '94 of all times. Same year that Clerks came out. So kind of pulling references from the past. Kevin Smith was doing that. I was doing it at the same time. Not saying I'm Kevin Smith level. Lord knows my income's not Kevin Smith level. But it was kind of like the same mind space. So some people mistakenly think Sniper and Rook take place in the 80s because Sniper has a DeLorean. That's just because it's the greatest car ever. Just under 9,000 made. There's still 6,500 of them operational.
Because none of them actually ran, John. They never ran. They're still in Ireland.
Wait until you and I share a room at a con again.
Here we go.
Was there jumping on the beds?
Nobody brought his banjo.
I heard there was a lot of snoring.
Yeah, actually,
I
have friends, Barb, that will not room with me anymore because of my snoring. I have one friend
your pain.
He launched a pillow at me at like 5 a.m. and said, "Get out! I don't care where you go. I need 2 hours of sleep." During a convention, I still feel bad to this day. And a couple other people choose not to room with me anymore. Dean, you were going to say something, then I'll go back to.
I was just gonna interject there when you mentioned the DeLorean. That my favorite '80s car has to be the Lotus Esprit.
Yeah.
It's
Cannonball
Run.
really
Inspiration for the DeLorean.
Lotus. Sorry, I was thinking Lambo from Cannonball Run.
No.
The opening scene.
No.
Two ladies.
Well, it's based. It's based on actual. I'm talking the James Bond.
I was just gonna say you're gonna say the one
70s.
with one of the best Bonds ever.
With one of the worst Bond movies ever.
Yeah,
I love Timothy Dalton. So yeah, was that the one that went underwater?
That's,
that one went underwater.
That's Moonraker.
Yeah,
there were
that's
two. There were two.
Roger Moore.
Yeah, Roger Moore had the white Lotus that went underwater.
Yeah. Okay.
In the 70s, and then the other one was used. I believe there was another Lotus Esprit in the early 80s in The Spy Who Loved Me. So all you Bond fans out there can correct me on that. There's an Aston Martin that looks very much like a Mustang that's in one of the Timothy Dalton films. I think it's in Living Daylights.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which my favorite band of all time, Aha, did the theme song for.
Absolutely.
That in there.
Absolutely. Just throw that in there. So back to you.
So here we go. And so, getting back to world building and actually all this ties together like a great big puzzle, as my high school teacher used to say. Aha is actually the first words used in the first Sniper and Rook.
Nice.
Yep, that was intentional.
Reference.
Every one of the first 5 issues, the title of the issue was an Aha album or song title. And so, there are a lot of things that actually tied it to our world. But again, revisionist history. So, Cold War had ended. We defeated the Soviet Union. Rah, rah, Red Scare is gone, right? Nobody would have thought that they'd be back the way that they are now. But in my world, my little tweaks, they didn't crash. There wasn't perestroika that broke out. There wasn't the movement in Poland that moved from Eastern Europe into Soviet Union. So Soviet Union is still a very strong power and still very much an enemy of the United States, much like today. Wow. So, we're definitely talking 20-some years before its time. If it was published 10 years later, it'd be definitely more of a period piece. But yeah, so it's, what was it? Max Headroom. Every time an episode of Max Headroom started,
Max.
And they would say, 20 minutes into the future. So it's like, this is our future just there. That's kind of how I see Sniper and Rook. It's our world is slightly different. Fringe that came out years later, if anybody knows about the Red Universe. I still believe I belong in the Red Universe with Faux Olivia, but that's a whole different story.
Oh boy. Faux Olivia.
Anywhere with Olivia.
But yeah, so how the Red Universe was just slightly different, and the comics were slightly different on the wall.
They all slick their hair over, right? Whenever it's an alternate universe, they all slick their, and everybody
they have a goatee.
Or
everybody gets epaulets.
I can't believe you just said that, Dean, because I was just going to say to Scott, I was like, every bad guy in the Beta 3 universe also has facial hair. So if you see somebody with a goatee, they're not good, most likely. So Scott and Rory and
there's Rob.
Rob. But so
yeah,
the world building, for Sniper and Rook is very much set in our world. It's 99% our world that I've just been able to tweak along the way. And talking about building the world and setting the stage for characters, Sniper and Rook wound up. Oh, I'm going to have to get back to InfoFan in a second. That's cool. But the plan for Sniper and Rook, because I wanted to be able to write characters first, stories second. I wanted characters I cared about. I loved the male-female duo dynamic. I am a child of the 70s and I'm a child of the 80s. So like going back to like Heart to Heart, going back to Scarecrow and Mrs. King, Moonlighting. Oh my God, Moonlighting. My kid, when he was like 5, he's like, "Can we watch that TV show with the boy and the girl?" And I knew who he was talking about. The will they, won't they? That's very much
X-Files.
X-Files. Yes. Yep. Into the 90s. Yes. So that duo, and of course Roland's original writing on Cat and Mouse. Very huge influence on me there. So I wanted a guy-girl duo. She has some strengths. He has some strengths. She has less weaknesses. Because it's real life, women have fewer weaknesses than we do because we're just dumb creatures. But it's just to be able to play on that. But as Sniper and Rook are government agents, what does the government have their hands in? Everything. So do I want to write today a traditional spy story, an espionage story? Sniper and Rook fit. Do I want to write a story where Sniper and Rook meet like aliens and monsters, I did in issue 6. So I went from like this spy story to this like aliens and monsters, and then back to like introducing some people in introducing some people with like costumes. So we're going to get into the costume adventurer world, and then back to more military stuff. And it all makes sense because they are in the government world. And that brings us to Sniper Nook Area 50. What? Which is going to be launched with Kickstarter tomorrow.
Where
Sniper Nook will be back.
Nice.
You heard it here, people.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, yes, agreed, Richard.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that's another one. Good call.
So yeah, so it makes sense because it's the government, and that allows me play in every genre.
It does. It does.
Sci-fi, action, adventure, spy, espionage, romance, issue 10. I got it all.
Can I throw something in?
No.
Yes, of course.
Scott, go ahead.
No, after you.
Oh no, please. No, you.
Okay, Chipmunk, stop it.
What you doing? I don't know.
They're having a polite contest apparently.
All right. Okay.
How a lot of our stories have something to do with government and the spy types and the military stuff. I wonder what gives it that staying power. Is it because it's in our collective memories from all the shows from the 70s, 80s, 90s about, government can do everything? Or is there some truth to it? Like, I don't know, was it Montauk? They're trying to make psychic kids or something with Stranger Things was based on? Like all the actual weird history that actually happens that gives it credence. Like, we could do really wild stuff.
So it goes back to Mengele and Hitler.
Yeah, paperclip.
Or even farther back if you're talking government. But, Rory, you're absolutely right. It's in our collective, consciousness, government or some other power, that is, I'm not saying like an Illuminati, but since you're talking about like being, with us being, children of media of our times, Knight Rider. Okay. The quest of the man, the man who does not exist. He's not working for the government, but he's working for Knight Industries. Contractor. Yeah. Now you sound like Kirk. Clerk. The contractor's on the Death Star. So there was always some sort of power, structure, organization behind things. So I think that's probably why a lot of us do pull from that source material.
So it's got to have a basis in reality. Things are funny because they're
It does. That's part of it. The other thing I'd like to suggest you guys to think about is one of the tentpole franchises, of course, that backs up the spy genre is Bond, right? So if we go back, Ian Fleming was writing from experience as he was part of the English intelligence community during World War II. But also, the threat at the time was the rise of the Soviet Union after World War II. So there was the Cold War. But with few exceptions, instead of Bond directly fighting the Soviets, which he did, both in the literary Bond and in film, there was always this third party, whether it was an organization like Spectre. There's usually a criminal organization that's manipulating the nations against one another, so then they can swoop in when the others are weak and take over, right? So I'm wondering, in your case, John, are you sort of saying, okay, the Soviets are bad guys, but then they're actually being manipulated by this other, like, Illuminati level organization? Or are you just sticking with those guys are the bad guys? That's it. How are you playing that?
I don't want to ruin anything for anybody who hasn't read the original series yet. But you're onto some stuff, because it can be, like you said, oftentimes another organization.
Right.
Or it could be individuals within existing organizations with their own agendas manipulating things, almost like a shadow government. Let's just say that.
Yes.
Or finding power structures, even when they've been removed from their own, existing power structure. Bond versus PTA,
Right.
that's cute.
That's really
even when
killer.
they've been
That's great.
removed from that power structure, where else have they already, aligned themselves, or what have they put aside in waiting to launch? And talking,
it's interesting. I was going to say, it's interesting how in the early years of the classic comic characters, let's say, for example, Captain America, right? He was straight up fighting Nazis.
Oh, yeah, punching Hitler on the cover. Yep.
Right on
you
the
know
cover.
what I'm saying? So imagine doing that now, right? So imagine trying to sort of go there. It'd be a different, I mean, you're walking in a very interesting minefield at that point, because people seem to not, they don't want to associate too much with the real world. So it would almost be like, for example, if we use China as an enemy, right, an adversary in a fictional spy story, you would almost feel pressured to make it, well, it's kind of China, but it's really this third party that's manipulating China again. You know what I mean? It's an interesting dilemma as a writer, or as a world creator, I should say, because do you want to go into the real world too far, because it can get really dark if you go too real. Does that make sense?
That's one actually. I've got two things on there if I remember both. One of them is like the MCU. So we're all MCU fans to some degree, I would hope, because there's some great stuff there. And who was the big bad organization? Hydra.
Right.
But we know Red Skull was a Nazi. Straight up, from the comics originally. Yep. I don't remember who it was from Marvel. But Marvel specifically said they're never going to say Nazi. They're never going to use the Nazi symbols. It's not going to be that party, because they don't want children playing with Nazi toys. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty illuminating. They don't want like a little Nazi action figure. I'm like, that makes sense.
Okay.
So you got the Hydra action figure as the surrogate. Just
little Nazis, get yours now.
Little Nazis.
So, that's a tagline that should never be used for anything. Yeah. We'll put that on. These shall never be used. But no, that's very much it, Dean. So how real do you want to get? Marvel made that decision. For that reason.
That's interesting. I from my experience as a kid growing up, a little bit earlier than most of you guys, I played with a lot of World War II toys, right? Both G.I. Joe, but also building models of both Allied aircraft and German aircraft, right? Nazi aircraft. And I'll just tell you, I had no compunction to be on the Nazi side, even though all their tanks were cool, all their planes were cool. They looked awesome, right? But I was still defeated. Hey man, we're gonna blow them up because they're bad guys, right? Yeah. So I never really bought into that whole, well, we don't want to make Nazi toys. I grew up playing with. I had a Stuka dive bomber that was the coolest looking airplane ever, but I knew it was a bad guy's plane, right? So I mean, and what about the Imperial stuff, right? Let's fast forward to Star Wars, right? Let's face it, those guys can design stuff, right? I mean, it looks cool. So by extension, if you play with Vader, does that make you like an Imperial sympathizer?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Yeah, but see, exactly with that, Dean, but that is also a fictional
fantasy. Yes, I understand.
It's
I understand what you're saying.
So yeah, it is it's still the bad guys to some, heroes,
right,
others,
right, right.
I love this phrase. This has been used before. Everybody is the villain in somebody else's story.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. You remember this though? I don't know if you guys remember. But you can look it up, man. They had G.I. Joes from every country, including the Axis powers in World War II. You could buy a Nazi G.I. Joe. You could buy a Japanese G.I. Joe. Wow. You could buy, obviously, British, Italian, U.S. They went full on everybody. So they were not shying away from bad guys being toys. So just interesting observation there from that era.
Let me throw in one last thing, and then I'll shut up for a little while, just because I want to pitch
sure.
stop something here.
Okay.
So years ago, one of my long-running friends, the brother from another mother, Michael Kasinger. Mike, if you're seeing this, hey, Mike is one of them who did the pencils for the Kickstarter exclusive cover for the new Sniper and Rook #1 that comes out tomorrow on Kickstarter.
Tomorrow.
All right. It's the I'm Not Your Christmas Money sale going on here. Mike,
tomorrow.
He hit me up one time. There's a comic store in his area that does a book. They actually create a book every year for Free Comic Book Day, and they do different themes. And one year it was steampunk. And so Mike hits me up. He's like, I need a short story. I want you to write it for me. I'm like, what's the topic? He's like, steampunk. I'm like, that's not really my thing. So, because it's not something I'm well versed in, something I'm not that knowledgeable of. And I don't like writing short stories to begin with. So, when I did Sniper and Rook #7, it's 3 short stories. That was to test myself. When I wrote the one for the Silverline holiday special, that just came out, the Christmas book, that one was even tougher because that was 6 pages. Oh my God, that hurt. But so I had to do a steampunk book, and I'm like, I'm going to start off with an alien. So it's a steampunk alien who is basically a bounty hunter. He is transporting his bounty across the galaxy. The bounty, breaks free. The ship crashes into Earth, old Earth.
Yeah.
And that's how steampunk technology came to Earth.
That's cool.
The creature that was being transported metamorphosized.
Was it a Cthulhu?
And is the Loch Ness Monster.
Oh.
So the world is built upon our Earth with real Nessie, and that's where Nessie came from.
Hey,
and
John.
So, yeah.
Next time you say aliens, could you do your hair up like this, please? And say, aliens.
I'm not saying those aliens.
Wow.
Some coined
like the meme guy.
Some coined of extraterrestrial.
I don't know. You put like a $1.50 with the hairspray in today. I don't know if I want to ruin it. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But no. So talk about building worlds. So even when I'm given something saying the topic's steampunk, draw me or write me a story, and then I'll draw it based upon your outline, I still base it in some sort of reality, in location, with a real Earth monster, with logic on how it got to be there. And I would love to do more things with her. So basically, the alien dies. A girl finds the... Is that like a real phone?
Yeah.
Like, those things even exist with a cord? Oh, wow.
Is that a rotary?
Like rotary? So that's part of this, that's part of the steampunk stuff, right?
That's my scanner. Actually. Yeah, it's actually a fax machine too. So that's
So a young lady named Mady finds the dead alien carcass with the steampunk tools and takes it, and she becomes Mady, the Steam Maiden. And the future adventures of her would be moving forward on now what she's going to do with these newfound tools and technology. So
nice.
If you want to do a crossover, guys, you're doing Steam Patriots. I got Steam Aliens. I got a Steam Maiden. I got the Loch Ness Monster.
Is it just called Alien Punk? Or is that...
No, it's actually called Mady, the Steam Maiden.
No. I'm saying like there's Diesel Punk, there's Cyberpunk,
Nuke Punk.
There's Steampunk, there's
we call
Cyberpunk.
it Medic Punk.
Medic Punk.
Yes.
I love it.
So anyway, back to you. I promised I'd shut up after that one.
Oh wow! I mean, we're talking about going off the rails. There are no rails, man. We're just boom.
Hey Rob.
Anywho,
you're very scratchy. Can we, Rob? Your mic gets on your beard there. And
your beard's bristly.
Very scratchy. Yeah, that's good.
Nice.
No, we're gonna
very nice. Okay, so
yeah.
Okay, let's expand a little bit beyond the creating new worlds. When you do this, how much let's put it this way, how much science fiction are you guys going to add to your world, and is it enough to take us into fantasy, or is it grounding us still in your world? Scott and Rory, talk a little bit about the technology of your world and how far you're going to go.
Go for it, Rory.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, all right. So in our deep dives into the libraries of Philadelphia, Pittsburgh,
not Pittsburgh,
not Pittsburgh.
Philadelphia.
I don't know. Hey, you wrote most of it. Even when we first started, we knew technology was going to be such a heavy-handed thing, because when you think steampunk, crazy technology stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like Scott said 100 times before, we want to make it just barely, in the beginning, just barely more, I don't want to say convenient than a horse, but things will break down. It's the burgeoning, it's the birthing of steampunk. So technology will be slow to start and then pick up steam. But all of the crazy weaponry you think of, it did exist. Like Gatling guns existed in the 1700s. There was a patent for them in England. But when you think Gatling gun, you think, Civil War. They were just too expensive to manufacture. Thanks,
Rick's got you there. Yeah. but wait,
Richard Dunn says,
fact check.
We didn't cross the Ohio.
Yeah, Richard Dunn, Steam VIP.
Yeah.
You do reference George Washington near the Ohio. Don't Google it. Which river? Battle of the what? When he was younger.
Ooh.
Richard Dunn. Battle of the what? Oh, geographically close to the Ohio River.
French and
Indian
War.
This is.
He was not a general, and he was not fighting for America. So yes, Rory, if I could pick up, you're talking about.
Please.
We wanted. So if it's all established in the 1800s in the general accepted steampunk world, back up, we're going to have these machines. Just think of like any beginning of the automobile or beginning of who knows what sort. They're just like or motorcycles. Thank you, Rick. The beginning, like you think of motorcycles and automobiles at the turn of the century through World War I in the 1920s. Everybody was slapping a motor on a bicycle or on a frame, and they were doing 3 wheels, 2 wheels, 4 wheels. They were putting baskets on them, and so like right now, I mean, in our real world, electric motors are going in anything that has wheels. They're putting them on every motorcycle, every car. They're trying to make anything. Yeah. So sooner or later, though, it'll all. We'll get down to what works. So we wanted a world where people are putting boilers on carriages. People are running their mill with a boiler. People are, they've got their hybrids, their horse boiler hybrid with the braking power to power the steam of the horses. I don't know. But what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to get too wacky in the sci-fi world. And I love it. I love steampunk. And I love sci-fi. But sometimes you got that steam powered jetpack. How's it happening?
Mm-hmm.
How is that?
That's a little too sci-fi.
Right. We want it to be just past,
practical.
Right. But where people can say, okay, how is that working? But I get you. It's not too far in the realm of fantastic. But we don't want to jump the technological shark where it's like, what? How it's not even anywhere near possible. So
shark.
That brings me to a serious question for Rory, and this is serious. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
African or European?
I don't know that. Boom. I just wanted to throw that at you. So I like the fact that you guys are keeping it sort of under control. You're not going to go off into keeping it real. No La La Land here. No craziness. Now, Barb, I know that in your world, other than divinity's powers, I get the impression that it really is our world. But are you taking, in terms of cities, environments, small towns, are you using real names consistently? Or are you going to, Gotham or New York City? How are you going to go with?
I'm actually using real cities. We start out in Stamford, Connecticut, and then we go to New York, and and you'll see up in the next series, they're down south, and they're going to end up in a very tiny little town, and I won't name that town because bad things happen there. Yeah, well, no. But it'll be an unnamed little backwater town because I don't want to smear the name of an actual town. But
Vicksburg.
They'll travel through real places, motels, staying, and so people can actually, kind of track them. Oddly enough, they're kind of meandering their way towards New Orleans. I don't know what that's going to mean eventually, but we'll find out.
We could do a Divinity road trip.
Yeah, we could do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how New Orleans plays a role in your story because, you worked on Cat and Mouse for a while, and you've said before you like the city because it has a mystery to it, as a mystique, I should say, to it.
The problem that my trio is running into is that with this worldwide cabal, they're keeping an eye out on everything, and they're just now beginning to realize that it's much more widespread than they had originally thought it was. I mean, they have no idea what they've gotten into, and they're beginning to realize that this cabal has got eyes and ears everywhere. So if they go into the larger cities, there's more eyes, there's more cameras on them, remote cameras and ATMs and crooked cops and stuff like that. But if they get into a too small town, they also stand out like a sore thumb. If you guys have ever gone into a very tiny town where everybody knows each other, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Oh,
like my cousin Vinny.
Yeah, strangers in town.
Yeah.
So
Right.
What's a Utes? Yep. These Utes.
That also brings unwanted attention to them. So they're trying to walk a fine line between too small and too large, because no matter what they do, if it's too small, they've got eyes on them. If it's too large, they've got eyes on them. So they're trying to wind their way safely between the larger and the smaller towns.
I always love the story of the entire, it's like everybody against your hero or heroes. I love that. Like The Fugitive, that I think it's very much based on The Fugitive. Creates just such a great amount of peril that there's nowhere to turn. I love it. I love that. And especially now with the modern, when you add the modern element, I mean, like the Fugitive show and then the movie.
Enemy of the State.
Yeah.
That was perfect.
Or like Minority Report.
There's no privacy. There's no privacy. Everybody with a cell phone.
Exactly.
You can't.
I would always tell my guys, pictures are evidence, not
somebody.
memories.
Yeah.
So they're really trying to stay off the radar, but everybody and their dog has got a cell phone nowadays, and she's going to eventually pop up on the internet. So.
Well, right. Spider-Man, the last movie. It's like instant. He's all the phones are on him, all the news cameras, the helicopters and stuff. That's awesome, Bob.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Now, John,
yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about the technology in Sniper and Rook. Are you going to go? How far are you going to go into sci-fi? I should throw that out there.
Actually, it's almost like you planned this one because this Kickstarter throws it massively into sci-fi. So the first 5 issues, the first 5 issues, my original story. 100% espionage, spy, government, conspiracy stuff. And then issue 6 went into aliens and monsters and, scientists, oh my. It was really, really a crazy bend. And that was still grounded here, and there was some regular humanity stuff going on at the time. But then with this 3-issue miniseries that's launching tomorrow, that takes issue 6 as the starting point. Not that anybody has to read issue 6 to understand what's going on, but if you do, that's cool. And it runs it into sci-fi, big time.
Okay.
Like by the end of this issue, you may go, are they even going to be on Earth anymore? All right, so it opens up some doors for people to go, where is he going with this? Like I mentioned, Area 51, the most well-known top secret location, on the planet. And, Roswell, New Mexico, Sniper and Rook, and I'll just give a little preview here, wind up at that base for a reason. And there's a scientist that's kind of walking them through a lab. And I tied intentionally some truth into some lies. With he's kind of got stuff set up in a display for formaldehyde bodies, And if anybody knows who had the first satellite in orbit around the Earth, anybody history major?
USSR.
You did.
It was USSR. It was not me. The Soviets. So Soviets had Sputnik. It was Sputnik, and it was not manned. You know, the second Sputnik that went up actually had a dog. Laika. I can't pronounce it. Laika.
Laika.
My twist, the scientist actually shows that wasn't Sputnik 2 with that dog. That Sputnik 2 was a failure, crashed. That dog died, who he also has in formaldehyde. That dog's named Einstein. So any idea where I got a dog named Einstein from? Maybe along with my DeLorean. Yeah. I'm kind of playing with some fun there. So it's like, but then the Soviets didn't want to admit that one of their things crashed. They launched another one immediately. That came back down successfully with the dog alive, Lakia. And that one they only said was Sputnik 2. So I'm taking, real history with some sci-fi and making it what's true in my world. But where the characters are going to go from here, this story is going to take them places they have not been before. So, yeah.
Are you going to address? It sounds really cool. Are you going to address the leaders by name? Like, is the president going to be the president? Or the president of the Soviet Union going to be? I mean, how are you going to deal with the actual historical figures?
When I first created Sniper and Rook, it was very reality based to the point where the president there is a president who is a central figure from issue 1. Then there is the first lady who is a central figure from issue 3 or 4 on. And then you have the Russian Duma or the Soviet Duma, which is basically like their Congress, So and the premier, the Soviet premier, all of the names have been changed to protect me. So my issue 3 ends on a cliffhanger with one of the named people that I just named, but they were actually the artist drew it as a real life political person.
Ooh.
And because that's how I wrote it. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, there's going to be a knock on my door in the middle of the night. And I don't know if I want to go to some like off-site prison in the Czech Republic. So
if we stop hearing from John pretty soon.
So I took it to one of my other artist buddies before I went to press, and I'm like, yeah, Brian, can you like put some like glasses on her and make her look a little bit different, so like I'm not like getting called by the popo. So there are some stand-ins. If people want to read into, they may read it one way, they may read it another, which is very, very cool. In education, I'm an educator. I loved my professors that would always bash both sides where it was deserved. I never preach like one side over the other. So some people will go, oh, he's bashing the left, or oh, he's bashing the right. Read into it however you want to read it, as long as you enjoy it. That's all I care about. I just want to make it an entertaining story. Yeah, buy it and enjoy it. That's the most important thing. So, so along with that being, that's where, a lot of the stuff is going to be surrogates, as opposed to named people. And also, and if I use actual people, so let's say I did Nixon, right? Let's say I chose Nixon. That dates my piece. Now that puts it in the 60s, 70s. There's no breaking from that. Even if it's like Nixon the third, like his kid's kid, it still puts it in a time period I don't want. So, Soviet Premier Ryzhkov was the Soviet premier in my 5-issue first story. There's no such dude by that name. President Kelly is the president that's in Sniper and Rook, the series. There's nobody by that name. KGB is led by a gentleman named Alexei Reznikov. There's nobody by that name. Those are all copyright and trademark me at this point. But, those people don't exist.
You're going to get a lawsuit in the mail from Alexei Reznikov one day.
Apparently there was a young lady. There was a young lady in the Duma who had a name very similar or the same as one of the double agent spies that shows up, Adenolova Petronova. But yeah, it's not based on her, I swear. So,
tennis player.
What about This yeah, it is. This is open, but since you're telling us about yours, John, let's start with you. We have addressed in previous episodes the proclivities of some directors, James Gunn, who relies way too heavily on pop culture music to sell his concepts. Do you ever think of, since you're doing sort of a semi-real world thing, do you ever use like pop music or pop culture references, like a film billboard in the background or music playing? You know, some writers will add music playing on the radio or in a club.
Yes.
Do you plan to use any distinct pop culture like that?
It has shown up, and it actually shows up in a future issue that is slated. I've got about a dozen issues that have to go before I could use this other one that's been penciled in, inked, and it's beautiful and gorgeous and done by a very talented gentleman who will remain nameless for now because I want to drop that bomb when it comes. But yes, there are absolutely been references. So like I mentioned, aha being the first words in the original Sniper and Rook. Sniper and Rook are dispatched to the Soviet Union to try to take care of, you know, the political issue going on in that first issue or the first story arc. And they're casing the KGB, KGB headquarters, the Kremlin. All right. So they're out there at night casing the joint, you know, trying to look like a couple. And there is a Soviet guard that comes up to them, and they're like, "What are you doing here?" And then, you know, Rook, you know, and so I usually write them more as Jack and Rebecca than Sniper and Rook because they spend more time in civilian garb than, you know, with masks on because, you know, spies, right? And so she's like, oh, and of course they had a camera. You know, she's like, oh, yeah, you know, we're just here scouting locations for a Kylie Minogue video, which I use because I love Kylie Minogue, right?
You do?
And so, and then the guard busts out. He's like, "Oh my god!" You know, and she claimed to be Kylie's manager, right? And the guard's like, "Oh my god, Kylie Minogue, I love her. Anything that you need, you know, let me know."
What are the chances that that guard loves Kylie
exactly
Minogue?
Right? But it comes and saves your butt at the end of issue 2.
Yeah, that's
you know, like when they run into him again. It's just it was amazing fun to do. If anybody, and hopefully all of our listeners and watchers bought the Silverline Christmas book, there is a hidden Kylie reference in my story. It's on one of the reindeers. What's it called? Collar.
Antlers?
Yeah. So no, the collar. So that was kind of
collar. Okay.
But yeah, you know, so there have been some pop culture references. The one that's done by the artist in the future, if anybody remembers one of the best TV shows that's been on in a long time, spy related to, called The Americans, which is also based upon reality, where there were Soviets that were undercover in the United States acting like married husband and wife. Very much true.
Yeah.
I have scenes that are taking place in the Soviet Union where there's a bus stop with a billboard with, you know, a version of that artwork from that promo piece. And instead of saying the Americans underneath, it says the people's heroes. So, you know,
nice.
Yeah. So there are some things if you look for them.
We have a comment that anyone. We got some.
Is that
right?
Dana saying?
I'm not real
they're
sure.
after you. They're after you now.
I think they already know.
You hit that algorithm.
We have a Soviet.
We're gonna have to. I want to throw that in a Google Translate.
I've got a.
I know, right?
Before I go, I do have to go. We've got I'm picking up a Steam Patriots fan on a page. Is flying from England to the United States to Buffalo International Airport. So I got to go welcome her to the United States and pick her up. Excellent. So it'll be a great, fun evening. Nerd stuff before I go. Rob, way back, you were talking about Star Trek stuff. We got to always throw our Star Trek references. I got an Oculus VR for Christmas for the family, and I played Bridge Crew. If you want to geek out on Star Trek stuff, after your first mission, you unlock the original Enterprise or the Enterprise D. You can be the helmsman or ops or the captain or engineering. It's crazy cool. Bridge Crew is awesome. So that's my geek out moment for the evening. And, John,
sir,
I can't wait to read your comic.
Thank you, sir.
Tonight or tomorrow, rather, it's going to be launching. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a little earlier. I have no idea.
Roland does some crazy stuff. That's all I'm saying.
Richard Dunn, you are. Go back to the greater Ohio River Valley and young George Washington with. You've been there. I know you have. We visited it together. So hey, everybody, I got to bounce. I'm off to the Buffalo International Airport on a beautiful January evening in Buffalo, and love you all. And make mine Silverline.
Good seeing you, Scott.
See you guys later.
Adios.
See you, man. Next time. All right. So here's a question for you. Is it? And there's no right or wrong answer here, but I want people to. Yeah, he's gone. He's gone. Now we can talk about it. Now.
Talk freely.
Talk freely now. Okay, I want you guys to take on. How do you feel about iconoclastic world building? I'll tell you what I mean by that. What if you brought a song or a reference that is not consistent with the time period? I'll use an example. A very popular film in the early 2000s with Heath Ledger was something. It was a movie about knights, right?
Oh yeah. We Will Rock You.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah, and they used a lot of like modern pop music. Okay, so I want people's takes on that approach, and starting with you, Rory, since you brought up Queen in A Knight's Tale. Go. How do you feel about doing that?
I think it works great as long as they're consistent, and as long as you can.
Okay.
I don't want to say balance, but merge the time period sounds, like those medieval, those classic medieval notes you hear, like we were talking about Kingdom of Heaven and the music.
Right.
The music and the arrangement of it had to meet, because like the original chants didn't sound anything like it, but they had those medieval tones to it, things that are again in our collective memory of what the medieval times sound like. What did the music sound like then? And then you have people that like The Witcher come along and just blow it out of the water. Doesn't make any kind of sense at all. But fantasy world. But as long as as long as they can balance that, the usage of the two, I think it could work extraordinarily well, like A Knight's Tale.
Okay. All right. What about you, Rob? Thoughts on using?
What comes to mind immediately for me is Lady Hawk.
Ooh, good one.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where a lot of electronic music, and so it sounds very, very. It's almost dated now because of that, unfortunately. But it's got Parsons Project. That guy, the guy that did Parsons Project.
Yes.
Yeah, Alan Parsons.
Yeah, Alan Parsons.
I couldn't think of his first name.
Yeah.
And he did the soundtrack for that, and it's mostly synthesizer.
That's a very 80s thing.
But
that was
what he did with it, he gave it a real orchestral sound.
Yes.
So it worked in that respect. I think it gave the whole thing a different kind of feel. It kind of pulled it out of. It wasn't so heavily stuck in, the time period. It looked like it was in it. It kind of pulled it out of that and put it in a completely different space. Which worked real well for me. I thought that's a real good example. I think of where it's done really well. I haven't seen A Knight's Tale all the way through, but I'll tell you, when I first heard the pop music sound in it, I went. It took me out of the story.
Yes.
So
really,
that's not a good thing. You don't want to do that.
No.
But the music in Lady Hawk didn't do that because he found that right balance. It's a tough balance to find. Yeah. But that's what came immediately to mind when you said that.
Yeah, that's a good example.
I have to agree that if we're going to do a period piece, I would like to. I prefer it to tend more towards the authentic. Either use authentic musical instruments, or at least try to mimic it, sort of. The Knight's Tale was that sort of thing. Completely throws me out of the story.
Yeah, it drew me right out of it. I haven't seen the whole thing, but I saw portions of it, and when that popped up, I went,
That's one.
Yeah, kind of.
That's the danger.
It's
with
distracting. It can be distracting.
Yes,
yes,
it is.
it was
It's
in this case, yeah. At least for me. So
the suspension of disbelief is essential.
I lost
watching
that.
a movie or reading a book.
I lost that.
And my take on it, it didn't pull me out of the movie. I think to answer Dean's question, good or bad, the answer is yes. I think it really depends on the piece itself. And I'm not talking the musical piece. I'm talking actually like the movie or the the piece of writing. Because if you have something a little bit more absurd, where you get something kind of left out of the left field like that, you're already kind of in an absurd kind of world. So more absurdity just makes sense.
So,
but if it's really historically grounded, and then you get that, it's like that's going to knock you right out.
Right. That's a good point. A tone has a lot to do with whether pop music or current culture is successful in the world building. So, for example, I'll throw something out at you. If you were doing, let's say, a fantasy story, right, but the tone of it was not serious fantasy like Peter Jackson's take on Lord of the Rings. Let's say you were doing more Princess Bride version of fantasy, then it would be okay to throw in like Stairway to Heaven, right, in the background, right? Because then you go, okay, well, it's kind of like winking and nodding to the audience.
Princess Bride was satire anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
It wasn't
so that
intending
works.
to be true to life.
Anything serious.
Right.
But then you have Marvel doing this with stories that are supposed to be grabbing us and bringing us into the drama, like Thor Ragnarok. There's a split belief on that, right? So some people are like, oh, that's such a heavy subject. He took it completely out of a different window and made it more comedic in order to make it, in a way, more believable. Because if you tried to do that in a dark, serious way, it would be very, very difficult to sustain that level of dark drama for 2 hours, right? So he brings in and starts us out with, Zeppelin Immigrant Song right at the very beginning, and you know what you're in for the rest of the movie, right? So it works in that particular format. But I have friends who loathe that. They're like, it's Thor Ragnarok. It's the end of the world, for crying out loud. Why did they turn it into a comedy? So again, you're going to alienate some and then bring some people
with
in.
that, it really comes down to balance, and I hope that nobody will pass on my Kickstarter for what I'm about to say. I am not a Zeppelin fan.
I'm out.
And I know that our CEO.
There goes my bucks.
I know that our Lord and Master is a Zeppelin fan because he named different issues of some of his books after Zeppelin titles. That's kind of where I got that idea from. But I liked and actually love the use of Immigrant Song in Thor because I thought it fit great. I was surprised they used the song twice, to tell you the truth. But it fit in both scenes, so it was great. It was a great fit.
It's that callback. It's how you make the movie, and that side scrolling with it. I mean, it fit the time period that they were trying to mimic.
It fits it.
Yeah. So I thought.
But if I was
that
doing,
was a great use.
Right. So it depends on the tone. So that brings us to this as we get close to wrapping up here. I want everyone's take on the tone of your world. How important is it for you guys to establish that tone, do you believe? And how do you do that? Rory, I'm going to start with you. When you're ready to establish the tone of your world, how do you do it?
Well, if we're just talking about the comic format, you are heavily relying on colors and how it's drawn. So we have that much more sketchy, incomplete looking. It's very I don't want to say colonial. I don't want to say ancient. Like it's being constructed almost, and that's what we're going for. Like our technology, like we said, is just burgeoning at the beginning. You're following along not only with the storyline, but as the technology progresses. So, I mean, you're heavily relying on color So
that's good. That's a good call. Scott
amazing.
Kilberg says, "Good evening, team. Logged in just now. Hello, Barb."
Hi. He might be related to me.
Might be some way. Hey, Scott,
you're not going to place ownership.
Welcome.
All the Kilbergs are related.
So, what about you, Barb? As far as establishing tone, how do you do that with your with Divinity? What is it? Color, like Rory's saying? Is it visual? Is it dialogue? Is it how do you do it?
Well, first of all, I wanted to go with a clean classic style, something that would appeal across the board. I didn't want to be archaic, like going back to the 1940s style, but I wanted it to be clean and simple, and classy, So that was the first tone I set. I wanted it to be accessible across the board to everybody. I wanted the story to be accessible. I wanted the art to be accessible. So I went with a simpler look, a cleaner look, and it's not too dark in color, and it's not going to be too bloody in content. It's not going to be childish by any means, because there's definitely some violence, and there's not some questionable violence at that, but the violence that does happen isn't going to be close up and bloody. There's going to be some morally ambiguous stuff, but again, I think most people can relate.
Yeah,
it's going to be for a reason. So I wanted to go for a classy style, and that's kind of the tone that I set. Something that, like I said, totally relatable, whether you're a child, a woman, a man. It doesn't matter. It's gonna be relatable for anybody.
That's good. Rob, what about you? I know from an artist's point of view, for us, it's more about, accuracy to the reference of the time and place and so on. But if you're drawing the backgrounds for a horror story versus Star Trek, how are you going to change your approach if you do at all?
More black. I'll put a lot more blacks in. A lot more shadows and
shadows.
Yeah. You want to give it the shadows deeper and darker, and the angles. You don't do
more dramatic.
Try not to do too much of this. You start giving all kinds of angles inside of it, so it's jaggy, and it keeps the viewer and the reader off balance. You want them to feel like, that's
flashlight.
You want them to have, you want them to have a little bit of the hair on the back of their neck should stand up. Another direction to go is, when you first mentioned this, it came to mind the book I worked on with R.A. Jones at first was Scimitar. And the first story we did was rather serious and very dark. And I was feeling my way through that. But the second story was called Feast and Famine. And the characters in that were just outrageous, completely outrageous. So I drew them more cartoony. Those two, now the regular characters stayed the same, but those two guys who were the bad guys in it, I drew them, over the top. They were more cartoony looking. So there was that going on. Now the backgrounds and everything else stayed the same. In some cases, I went a little more cartoony as well. But that was to kind of to contrast the fact these guys were cannibals.
Oh, okay.
They were cannibals, but they were dumb. They were they were just really dumb. And so I didn't want to do them seriously because number one, they were cannibals, and number two, they were dumb. So I wanted to make them more comedic. Now we got some bad comments because of that, but I expected it. I expected people to go, well, what did you do them so like that for? Because this was a different kind of story. And that's kind of like the way R.A. writes, is you'll think he's being really serious, and then suddenly you'll get to this section and it's hilarious. It's satirical and he's really poking it really hard. So in this particular case, I really wanted to emphasize that with the way these two characters looked. I wanted them to be over the top, so you would get the fact that we're poking fun at something here, and so you would get that point across. So it's a matter of just having the right, and I say this over and over again, because I fly by the seat of my pants doing storytelling, and what I come up with, it's whatever feels right at that time. That's what I go for. I feel it's when I overthink things, it gets stiff, and it just doesn't work as well. It's a lot more fluid if you just kind of go with the flow. So,
well, so you're saying that that all makes good sense. You're saying that a combination of more shadows if it's a darker story tone, but also caricature if the characters call for that. You're not opposed to going full on caricature.
No, and obviously I've done it. But So, and I've done everything.
That's
from
good.
Saturday morning cartoon looking stuff to I haven't done talking animals yet. But
I haven't done that either. I haven't done that either.
That would be kind of fun.
So
actually, no, I take that back. I did do one. It was Eben for Now Comics. I did one issue of that. The Talking Raven. It wore a big cowboy hat. Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Did you actually get paid from Now Comics? Because I
hey, that's what I was for.
Oh, actually,
I had to threaten a lawsuit to get it, but I got paid.
Well, I got paid.
Wow.
I got paid for all but my last project, and all of a sudden they stiffed me. But that's the only time I've ever been stiffed.
Well,
I hate to admit it, you probably didn't get paid because I did.
Oh well.
I think that the money was gone by then. I think.
I know it was.
They spent it all making trips down to Bermuda.
They spent it on lawsuits, is what they did. They spent it on legal fees.
Well, after a while,
guys, we are at the point of the show where we have a surprise, and I'm going to be adding our fearless leader and his associates to the stream right now because we have some special announcements. Roland and Tommy and Haley, welcome to the broadcast tonight. Roland, I hear you have a special announcement.
Yeah, you were supposed to play the video first, dude.
You were supposed to. No, you were supposed to tell me where the video is. I never saw the video.
It's fucking bottle video clips.
Oh man.
It's video clips.
It's hard to get good help these days.
It is, isn't it? Isn't it terrible? Okay, is it under?
All right, we'll kick us back off again and then start it over.
Got it.
Hi, I am Roland Mann, and I run Silverline Comics, the genre-spanning independent comic and graphic novel publisher. And I'm here to tell you about our latest Kickstarter. I'm not going to waste any more time talking. John, tell us about Sniper and Rook.
Hey there. Thanks for stopping by. My name is John Medic, and I am the creator and writer of Sniper and Rook, now coming to you from Silverline Comics. Thanks for checking out our Kickstarter, and we hope that you'll go ahead and pledge. A little bit about Sniper and Rook. They are a pair of covert government operatives where they work underneath a specific general. They are tasked with missions that take them across the globe, across the world, across maybe the universe, since we're dealing with Area 51. Check it out. Pledge today.
Thanks, John. And now I get to tell you about the rejects. Come on, I'm so excited to tell you about this one.
When danger is near, we need heroes who can respond decisively and with authority. When evil is around, we need superheroes who can fight supervillains. But what do you do when the Fantastic Four is busy? When the Justice League is unavailable? When the Avengers are out of the galaxy? the world has no other option. They call the Rejects. Rejected by all other respectable superhero teams, this band of misfits joins together to fight crime and injustice, and maybe get a mention on the evening news. They are formidable, ferocious, fearless, and forgettable.
John and I are so excited. Actually, we've been really anxious to do a Kickstarter together for like 2 years now. Maybe 2 years. Something like that. It's been a while. So, back it if you can, share it if you will, and remember to make mine Silverline.
Hey, very nice.
Well
done, boss.
I was trying to hold my
That's awesome. That's awesome. Wow, I like it. I like it.
Because I was turning it the other way and I was doing this all the time. and BJ said, "Well, why don't you just flip it around and you can just hold it up like that?"
No, you need a little sidekick that walks in on this screen.
Well, I've started putting it on my microphone, but his head is too big.
So, hey, John, did you know this was going to happen tonight?
Not exactly, but you know,
isn't that cool?
I've got my Area 51
Go
technology where it's like my spider senses were tingling or whatever. No, I wondered, but I had no idea that video was made, so that is pretty cool. Thank you, Head Honcho, for that. He had asked me to shoot 30 seconds, and Roland knows me. He's like, keep it to 30 seconds.
Yeah, right.
And then you made a PowerPoint. 30 minutes later, Roland had to edit it down.
But yeah, I didn't know it was going to be used for that. I just figured it'd be on the Kickstarter page or something. So that was awesome. Thanks, boss. That was very cool. Very cool.
So the funny thing
and you filmed it in Instagram up and down instead of sideways too.
I saw that. That was my first thought. I'm like, dadgummit, doesn't he know about VHS syndrome?
Huh?
The vertical syndrome, dude. You're filming everything like this. You gotta film it like. I'll send you a video. You'll like it.
Widescreen's always better.
I only had the one banner, and the rest of it would have been a big picture window, so it would have looked like junk, and you wouldn't have wanted that. It would not have displayed very well. So next time, I'll make sure I have a nice background behind me.
So the funny thing about it is, I recorded my little segment about the rejects, right? And it was more than 30 seconds. And I had to go and trim mine. I didn't have to trim John's. I had to go and trim mine. I'm cutting mine. I'm cutting it. I'm like, I got to get it down to 30 seconds. What the heck?
Well, John's got editing software. He probably filmed an hour worth and cut it down to 30 seconds. And that's what he sent you.
And, originally, I think it was Nick Cage that contacted me because he needed some paper. And, but I had to say no. I got better hair.
You were busy. You were busy.
So what do you say we launch this thing?
Let's do it!
I am looking at the Kickstarter the page that says ready to launch. So I'm going to push the button and we'll see what happens. Are y'all ready?
Let's do it. Wait a minute, is it gonna turn off the stream like on Sunday?
No.
Okay.
The more I think about that, the more I think that might have been Curtis.
I think it was Curtis because he was logged in as an admin, and then he had to reboot and shut it all down. I think that's probably.
I think he might have done it by accident, but I think that might have been Curtis.
He just didn't want us to have fun while he was rebooting.
All right, I'm gonna click. I'm ready to launch. What? Oh yeah. All that. I agree with all that stuff. I know. Launch project. You ready? Here we go. Somebody give me a drum roll.
Let's do it.
And it's live.
Yay!
All right.
Okay, bye. I gotta go.
Bye.
Oh my god.
First project of the new year, right?
So, hey, team, check this out. I just did a Google search for Kickstarter Sniper Rook Rejects. Roland's video is the first thing that pulls up.
What?
Yay!
I'm serious. It's awesome.
Is it on YouTube?
Yeah.
What the heck? I set it to premiere tomorrow.
Well, it says premiere the 13th. Now it's saying premiere is in 11 hours, but it is the first link.
So it will let you look at it?
It won't let you see the video, but it shows me your green screen and you looking really happy and pointing towards your face.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Cool.
That is
Yeah,
awesome.
I set it to date. You know, we've been telling everybody the 13th, so I set it to go live. The video to go live tomorrow at 9 a.m. So
way cool.
But now people can go onto the Kickstarter page and they can see it there. Hey, we already got our first backer.
Yay! We're done. We met our goal. All right, we're done.
Well, we're still a
And
couple
they
of
bought
dollars away.
6,000 copies.
Yeah. So, all right.
Exciting.
It's been a good show, man. This has been
It's
awesome.
a great one. Yeah.
John, appreciate you just really expanding and expounding on Sniper and Rook, because I kind of knew this was coming, so I wanted to build up.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to do it. So
absolutely,
very cool.
absolutely.
Like Roland said,
you're done for the year.
We've been wanting to launch something together for 2 years, and I've been wanting to publish something with them full for 20-some years. So it's about time. And like I told him today in an email, I got the fire lit underneath me. So this is just This is just the beginning. So I'll have my own sub fiefdom. It'll be great.
Well, yeah.
He doesn't realize that I'm sitting up under him with a flamethrower.
So what I'm hearing is that Roland wants to be near my behind. That's just what I heard.
It's an add-on.
What? Y'all are getting all gross again. What we gotta do?
On that note, I'm out of here. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Roland was talking about microphones and things last Sunday. Y'all should have heard.
Richard, awesome comment.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Richard.
y'all.
Appreciate
I gotta
it.
get back to work. See y'all later.
Bye, boss.
Good night, Roland. Good night.
I'm just gonna sit here for a minute.
Haley's always
This
a
has
talkative.
been really cool. Before we officially sign off,
I'm not going anywhere.
Haley, do you want to say hi?
Hi. Yeah, I wish.
Hi, Haley.
Really need to look at my camera.
I gotta help you figure out how to get your thing working.
I know. I tried everything I could think of, but yeah.
Between John and I, we can figure it out. John and I are computer guys. We can figure it out.
Yeah, you guys can do anything with computers. And with that being said, John, I'm going to take you up on your offer to cast me in the video promo as Jack in Sniper and Rook.
That photo that you posted, you look just like him. I'm like, he would make a wonderful Jack Barton sniper. It'd be awesome.
We'll have to just do that. We'll have to do a quick video and have fun with that one.
That'd be cool.
I think that would be great. That would be great. But on that note, I'm going to sign off, folks. I've enjoyed it. It's been a great show. We'll see you next week. And remember, everybody, what do we say? Make mine Silverline.
My name is Ross Ritchie from Boom Studios, and make mine Silverline.